Hi everybody, today we'll be focusing on a specific letter from our alphabet and the way that it changes the way that certain words sound. The letter that we'll be focusing on today is the letter E. We know that the letter E usually sounds like eh, and sometimes sounds like E, just like its name. Eh is the short sound that E makes, and E is the long sound it makes. This is our friend Ed, and his name starts with the short sound of E. So when we practice using this letter E, usually are trying to figure out a word that has E in it. But sometimes this letter, when it comes at the very end of a word, doesn't make a sound at all. Sometimes this letter is only there in order to boss the other letters around. And when it does this, we call it the bossy silent E. Let's practice this with some words that we've already read before. The first word I want you to look at, I'm going to cover up one of our letters before we get to the part that includes a silent bossy E. Let's focus on reading what this word would be as it looks right now. What's the first letter that you see in this word? It's an M, and it sounds like What's the second letter here? That's an A, and it sounds like ah. That's the sound it usually makes. What about this letter? That's the K, and it sounds like k. So far we have k, k. And if we blend them together, this would sound like mac. Now, this word, as it's spelled here, is not a word in English that we know. However, if I take my hand away, we see that there's an E at the end of this word. This is one of those bossy silent E's that's just here to boss one of our other letters around. The letter that it's going to boss around this time is the letter A. And when the E is here and it's bossing another letter around, what it's usually saying is, say your name. It's telling this letter that it's bossing around to say its name. So instead of sounding like ah, it's telling this A to make the long sound. The long sound sounds just like its name. It sounds like A. So instead of this sounding like it will sound like A, because our E is here to boss it around. Let's try reading this again. We know that our M is still going to sound like And we just figured out that our A needs to sound like A. And our K is going to stay the same. It's still going to sound like k. The E, even though it told our A to say its name, it's not going to make a separate sound on its own. It's just, the only sound it's going to make is to boss around this letter. So when we get to it, we do not sound it out. So when we read this word, we will say, make. This word is make. Without the E there to tell the A to say its name, we'd read this as mac. So this word is make. Let's try this with a word that has a different vowel inside getting bossed around. We'll start without the E at the end. Let's try to read the word that's on the board now. This is a real word. The first letter I see is H, and an H sounds like Then I see an O, which usually sounds like ah. Then I see a P, which usually sounds like p. So if we put these together, this word, something that a rabbit does, kangaroo, this word is hop. This word is hop. But what happens if we add one of those silent bossy E letters at the end? This is a totally different word. Let's try it. The first thing I see is still the H making the sound. But now my O is going to be different because O is one of our vowels that you can see. We know that since there's a bossy E at the end, and it's going to boss our vowel around, that our E is going to tell our O to say its name. And the name of this letter O that it will be saying is O. So instead of sounding like ah, 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 it will sound like O. So far we have O, and our P is going to sound the same as it did before. It will still sound like P. Our E will not make a separate sound at the end. It's just here to boss around our O. So let's try reading this word, knowing all of that. We have O, P, O, P. This is something that you can feel, and this is also something that you can have if you want something to go a certain way. This word is hope. Hope. Hope when we blend it all together. Okay. Let's try this word. We do see there's a bossy letter E at the end. So we know right away something's going to be different about one of our vowels. The only other vowel in this word, I'll let you take a second to think about it, is what letter? What is our vowel that comes before our bossy E? I see an I in this word. The I is right here. So we know that the letter that the E will be bossing around is our I. So let's make note of that with an arrow, just like last time. And we know our E, which sometimes when we practice this before, we'll even draw a face and some teeth. So we know our E is talking to another letter. Our E is bossing our letter I around and saying, say your name. So our I is going to sound like I, just like its name. Usually it sounds like I, but not this time. So let's try to read this word knowing that. The first letter in this word is the letter R, and it sounds like R. Our second letter is this I that's getting bossed around, and it's getting bossed around into saying its name. So it will sound like I. And our third letter is P, just like our last word. P. Our E is not going to make a separate sound. It's just here to boss our I around. So now we can read this all together. I. This is something that we look for when we're picking fruits or vegetables. This is something that shows that, or we know that something is good when it is ripe. Ripe. This word is ripe. Let's try another one. This one is going to be a little bit trickier, but I know you guys can do it if you stick with it. And I'll help you along the way. Okay, let's look at this word. We know again that there is a silent E at the end, and that's going to boss around one of these letters. Is one of these letters a vowel that we've been talking about? I see that A again, so I know that that's the letter that will be bossed around. I'm going to use my arrow. The other thing I notice is that this is a little bit longer than the words that we've practiced. Instead of having just 4 letters, there are 5 letters altogether. So we have to maybe focus a little bit harder on this. But remember, if our E is bossing around our A, we know right away that this letter is going to sound like A. Let's keep that in mind. Our first letter is the one that sometimes we can get mixed up, but this letter is a B, letter B. It's not the letter D because the bubble is on this side. It's on the front. So this is B. Then we have R. R, like our last word, sounds like R. B. We know our A sounds like its name. It's going to sound like A. And we have another letter here that we haven't seen yet today. This is the letter V. That sounds like V, V. So far we have B, R, A, V. And we have an E that is just here to tell our A to say its name. This is a word that is something that people can, it's a characteristic, a trait that people can have if they are doing something that might usually be kind of scary for a lot of people or even themselves. But if they're feeling this word, they might feel up to the challenge. You might be being this word right now if you're practicing this and this feels like a challenge to you. Let's try it again. B, R, A, V. Blend those all together really fast. This word is brave. Brave. You're being brave if you're practicing this challenging task right now. Okay, let's try this word. This one's a little different because it only has 3 letters, but sometimes an E at the end of even a word this short can be bossy. So we have to make a choice about which letter is going to be bossed around here. Which one of these is our vowel? In this case, it's our letter O. So let's take a look. The other thing that's different this time, compared to all the other words we've practiced today, is that the E is bossing around a letter that is right next to it. Usually our E is jumping over another letter to get to our vowel. This time, the vowel is right next to it. So this E is telling this O, say your name. So we know when we read this word, this O will sound like O, O, O. What could this word be? Try that on your own first, and then I will help you. Give you a few seconds to practice. Okay, let's try reading it knowing that this sounds like O, O, O. Should be quick. The first letter that we have here is the letter T, and it sounds like T, T. And we know that this O is getting bossed around to sound like O, 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 instead of ah, ah, ah. So if we read this together, we have T, O, and the E does not make a sound. This word is toe. This is toe, like the toe or toes that you have on your feet. All right, let's quickly review the words that we read today. I'll hold them up here. I'm going to point to the word, and I want you to see if you can read it before I say it. I'll give you a couple seconds for each one. What is this word? Remember that bossy E telling the O to say its name. This one was hope. Hope. Without the E, it was hop. What about this word here, the second one? The bossy E is telling the I to say its name. So this word is ripe, ripe, like a fruit or vegetable that is ready to go. What about this one? This was our longer word. The E is telling the A, say your name. So this word is something that you were all being when you were practicing this challenging skill. This word is brave, brave. And then the last one we did today, the silent E, the bossy E, was telling our O to say its name. So this was T, O. What word is that? This is toe, toe. Okay, thank you for practicing that today, and I hope you're having a great start to your week. Talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your day.